attributes and migrant background will be an impediment to integrating into a predominantly Anglo-Saxon political system and appealing to a similar demographic in the electorate. Yet, Jude Perera broke through these barriers. He became the first Sri Lankan-born and educated Member of Parliament in any lower house in Australia. He was elected as the MP for Cranbourne in 2002, securing a significant 61% of the total votes, and went on to win 3 subsequent elections, serving for 16 fulfilling years, something that my family is incredibly proud of. This remarkable achievement was a testament to his belief that if one really strives to do something, anything can be achieved, particularly for migrants. Indeed, towards the end of his career, many of the South Asian community were inspired, thinking if Jude Perera, who's outwardly not much different than them, can do it, then they can do it too. His early political successes in Australia were significantly bolstered by the unwavering support he received from the Sri Lankan community in Cranbourne, who were a main source of funding and campaign support.
That highlights particularly some of the challenges that produces, but also some of the achievements that he was then able to achieve. And I think when you look at that, in some respects, as a pioneer, like all pioneers, he faced challenges that those before him had either not faced or had not been able to actually conquer. And in the process of that, he was able to make a significant contribution. I think what it also highlights is we live in the times that we live in. And so you face the challenges that you face yourselves at the time. And often what's difficult is to reflect upon that when you're looking back 20 or 30 years later and trying to actually properly understand the nature of those challenges. So if I use myself as an example in that, I grew up in the 1960s and the 1970s in Australia, and it was a very different country in terms of the community at that time. Yes, we had a significant migrant community, and we have always been a nation of migrants over the last several hundred years, certainly. But in that context, the nature of the Australian immigration experience was very much European, and it was very much white. And that was the nature of the community that I was part of and that I was growing up in. And if you like, migrants from countries like Greece and Italy and the Balkans, who came out in that post-World War II period, they actually faced very similar challenges in many ways that more recent communities have faced, but not all the same because of some of the differences. But they faced racism, because racism has been part of Australian culture over centuries.
Jude made sure that our state schools in Cranbourne were resourced in a way that meant that the young people who are now leading Victoria in educational outcomes had exactly what they should have had. And in those last years, I know Jude was unwell, but that tenacity stayed with him, and that drive to make sure that the children of Cranbourne had what they need, so that if you do get a chance to drive past Cranbourne Secondary College, you will see that young people leaving that school, many of them people from Afghanistan who have come to Australia for a different life and a better life, many of them children from Sri Lanka, many of them from India, many of them from South Sudan are benefiting from that legacy.
Gates pathways for you as well. As we all know and as we've all heard, Jude was hardworking, he was resilient. He was a compassionate comrade who championed multiculturalism and equality. He knew what it meant. He was first elected to the Assembly back in 2002, and it's just extraordinary that he was there for 16 years. For those of us who are in politics, like 16 years in it, while you're representing your community, is a long time. I haven't been around for even half of that amount of time, but it's tough. It's hard work. But he was ready for that hard work. And I don't take that for granted, because in doing that work, he paved the way for other Sri Lankans as well to be a part of the lower house in the Victorian Parliament.
And help them. Even if he knew it was a big challenge, it didn't matter whether it was a state issue or a federal issue, he would never turn anyone away. He would bring them into his office and sit down, and he'd call the staff in and say, what can we do to help these people? He was constantly dealing with immigration matters, even though it was a federal issue. He would never take no for an answer. Many of the times he was on the phone himself with various state bureaucracies trying to fix people's situations. And he was just that sort of person that you knew that he had your back regardless of the circumstances you were in. And that was something I admired about him. And I think his love for his family was something that was also something that was very evident in everything that he did as well. And in his efforts to affect change in the community, promote diversity, and try and change society, he was doing that for the community, he was doing that for his family, he was doing that for his grandkids.
He was able to deliver. And if he could not deliver, after several attempts of trying, he would let you know that, I can't help you, bro. He was never too busy for anyone. Even in his last days of service, he was never too busy. The greatest example that Jude was able to impart upon me was his love for his family and that dedication for those that he considered family outside of his immediate family. He made you feel welcome and brought you in. He brought you into his circle and put you to work, you know, in whatever way. I remember when I was a legislator back in the United States, I would often tell my constituents to contact your legislature. Find out who your legislator is, reach out to them, email them. So when I moved to the Southeast, I picked up the phone or Googled on the internet to find out who represented me. I found it was JUDE PERERA. I picked up the phone, called Jude, left a message, and I would tell you, it was between an hour and it wasn't a day that went by that he gave me a call back and said, let's catch up.